the Democrats are saying that, look, the Republicans said back then when Obama was trying to push Merrick Garland, and remember that was 11 months before the election, the Republicans who were holding the Senate said that no, we're not going to put Merrick Garland in because we are too close to an election. That's what the Republican framework was. That's what they said. So you have this now. The election is less than 20 something days away, and then now the Republicans are pushing through with the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. And to me, I believe like if you have the Senate, then you do whatever you do that you can do that is legal, and it's legal. The Senate, if you have the Senate, then you could confirm your nomination. I don't have a problem with that. Like, I believe you should do it. The problem is, though, that the Republicans gave the excuse that they were too close to an election in 2016. Shouldn't have given any excuse. You should have just said that we have the Senate and we're pushing through. But because he gave that excuse, now the Democrats do have a point in saying, look, you guys said that you're too close to an election when we were 11 months. Now we're only a few weeks away, right? So the Democrats do have a point to be made. I believe it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but the Republicans put that standard in, so
no, it's true, like, honestly, it's just a question of power, like what you're allowed to do, right? So if you look at the nomination, like when Obama nominated someone to Merrick Garland in 2016, like end of 2015, beginning of 2016, the Republicans had the Senate, right? And one of the things that, like, Mitch McConnell, obviously nobody wanted, they didn't want Obama to fill that seat, right? And Mitch McConnell knew that if he allowed the vote, because from what I've read, Merrick Garland is a pretty moderate judge. He's not like the super left judge, like he's not super ideological, right? So from what I've read is that Mitch McConnell and the Republican leadership in the Senate were fearful that if they allowed the vote, a few Republicans would actually support pushing through Merrick Garland, so that's why they simply did allow the vote and just the confirmation hearings. And they said, there's an election this year, the winner of the election should nominate whatever, and they're allowed to do that because they had the power, right? They had the majority in the Senate. But this time around, they also have the majority and they also have the presidency, so they're like, okay, scrap that.
yeah.
Like basically they've been trying to reformulate it. But like if you look at Lindsey Graham's whatever he said, like he literally said, if there's a nomination in Trump's last year, I won't allow it.
And you can hold me to it.
And you can hold me to it. And then on his Twitter, now he has like, look at my updated thoughts about this. Like, updated thoughts? You updated your thoughts after you blocked the nomination. So it's pure power politics. And this should be a lesson for Democrats. When you have power, do what you have to do to, because like now you have Democrats who you actually have some Democrats who are they're not so sure about packing the court, which is constitutional. It's legal because the Constitution allows the Senate and just the House to define how many judges there are in the Supreme Court. So if they could win the Senate and the presidency in November, they have the full power to do it. But then like you'll hear excuses from
well, tell them what's packing the court for people who don't know.
So packing the court is basically, in the US there's 9 justices, right? And like I don't know the entire story of the Supreme Court, but like for the majority of the court's history, it's been like they've only had 9 judges. There have been some changes in the early 19th century, like around 1807, and like they've had changes on the number of justices, right? And the the last time someone tried to change the number of justices was under FDR, who was pushing his New Deal New Deal program, and he was fearful that the Supreme Court wasn't going to allow him to do what he needed to do after the war, right? So
because actually, if I believe 2 years before,
mhm,
right before he was facing re-election, he already like implemented some aspects of the FDR New Deal, but the Supreme Court had already struck down many key points in
mhm,
the New Deal.
yeah,
So when he won re-election by a large margin, 1936, you get to 1937. Now he's like, okay, time to put in a plan to pack the court.
yeah, yeah. So basically, packing the court is just like expanding the number of justices and on the Supreme Court, and nominating people who are mostly ideologically aligned with you as a president, or with the party governing the Senate, or has the majority in the Senate, right? So there are many plans about this, and a lot of people, a lot of not a lot, but at least Pete Buttigieg was talking about restructuring the Supreme Court early in the primaries, but that was one of those policies that fell out of the wayside because nobody was really interested in that. But like there has been conversation about reforming the Supreme Court, and like the packing the court. Discussion is just about like whether the Democrats are going to want to expand the court and put more uh, democratic friendlier justices on the court, but that could take many shapes, so it's yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, like we said, so they're talking about healthcare, and then it's that at that point where Biden is answering about healthcare and about the Supreme Court and
Mm-hmm.
about Amy Coney Barrett, that Trump interrupts for the first time and is like, "Are you gonna pack the court?
Mm-hmm.
Are you gonna pack the court?" And I believe that's when Biden was like, "Well, you shut up, man." That was that moment, and it just from that point on, it just goes left. It just goes completely left. And when it comes to packing the court, I wouldn't per se do that if I was a Democrat, because and I think they will do it because obviously Amy Coney Barrett, like her nomination is gonna go through. She's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be a justice, but I believe if you do that, like politics always bites you back in the butt, like very hard. And I believe the Supreme Court is just gonna become pure ideologies. Like it's gonna be pure politics. Because now both parties are gonna use like if they ever see like their margins disappearing in terms of who dominates the Supreme Court in terms of Republicans or Democrats, let's pack the court, and you don't want to set that precedent. So I would say no to packing the court. I don't know what you would say to that.
Well, I would say yes with a caveat, right? Like you know the the Supreme Court has been tilted towards conservatives and Republicans for many decades now, and that's just a fact about the U.S. The U.S. like the institutions in the United States. Even like if you look at the Electoral College, it's also tilted towards Republicans. Like there are many of these institutions that disadvantage Democrats in substantial ways. And for many of those years, in like that tilt and bias wasn't as felt as it's going to be now, right? Like now like Republicans are going to have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, which means that like anything that Democrats are going to try to pass is probably going to get rejected at the Supreme, like on the Supreme Court, So, which is it's just you cannot govern a country where every single policy and legislation is being rejected by the Supreme Court, right? Like if you think about like Obamacare, if they had this, if there was the composition of the Supreme Court was was like this as it's going to be at the end of the year 2020, like you couldn't have passed that healthcare reform, right? So I just don't think, for the sake of the American democracy, that it's healthy to have this sort of composition of the Supreme Court. So, court packing.
Because it would be 6-3 if Amy Coney Barrett is
it would be
confirmed.
6-3, and it would just be another piece of, like, another veto point in the United States system of governance, which already has many veto points, meaning that, like, there are many places where the legislation of the governing party can be stopped. Like, you have the House, the Senate, the President, and then the Supreme Court. And then in the Senate you have the filibuster. So, which is just another major advantage for the minority in the Senate, right? So I just think it's not something you can do that's good for the long term. So there's some reform that's needed on the Supreme Court.